Radio Sputnik, telling the untold.
Welcome back to Political Misfits on Radio Sputnik, where we bring you news, politics, and culture without the red and blue treatment. I'm Michelle Whitty here with John Kiriakou, getting into some dire economic predictions for the United States and asking whether indeed recession is coming and what this one might feel like. Joining us for that conversation is Steve Grumbine, founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action, and host of the Macro and Cheese podcast. Steve, good to talk to you after. It's been a while.
It's been a few minutes, hasn't it? Yeah. How are you doing?
Doing great. Very glad to have you back on the show. I want to start by asking you to look into your magic ball. Deutsche Bank was the first major institution to predict the U.S. economy will be in recession by next year. They are specifically attributing this predicted recession to the rate hikes that the Fed has begun, although they don't seem to be criticizing that policy either. And so I wonder if you think they're right, if we are going to be in recession by 2023, and who's to blame?
So, it's so hard because everybody is literally buried in this neoclassical economic framework. And so a lot of the stuff that comes out, they're saying something and it's meaningful. You're just interpreting it through the Krugman lens that everybody's been completely inundated with. But you see the spigot's been turned off at the federal level. They're literally cutting spending. They've even reduced the spending or outright cut it out for COVID support in terms of like vaccine support and any other support that was going on with boosters, you name it. And you're watching as the inflation goes up, which is largely price gouging. It's not demand driven. I wish it was demand driven. It's not demand driven. If it was demand driven, we could solve that pretty easy by producing more products and services, hire more people, you name it. But that's not what's driving. You got price gouging at the oligarch level, and that's going throughout the fuel and, hell, even the cost of poop has gone up. There was an article the other day about the rise in the cost of fertilizer. It's going to bring about even more inflationary conditions.
Yeah.
So you've got a situation where the economy is stalling and we don't produce anything anymore. Our economic picture is because of money manager capitalism in the finance sector. So these major corporations aren't producing anything. So supply chains aren't producing anything. So ultimately, it's a game where we look good on paper, but in reality, recession is right around the corner with the lack of federal spending going into the economy. And there's even people out there right now trying to say that Biden shouldn't be kicking the ball on the student debt bill out to August, because if he let the spending go out, it would curb inflation by taking away the buying power of who? We, the little people, all the old people that went back to school during the last financial crisis that now suddenly are strapped with student debt.
The problem is our buying power, Steve. That's what the problem. That's what's overheating the economy.
Isn't that humorous? I mean, that is ridiculous. So anyway, yes, we are going to hit a recession if there's not some sort of federal, there's only one answer out of this, literally one answer out of that, and that is either A, tax cuts to keep money in the economy, which sounds very Republican to an untrained ear, or to federal spending, which we have plenty of things we could be spending on domestically, as opposed to the war machine, which we seem to never run out of money for.
Yeah, how should the public understand the government's ability to, it is almost daily that you have a new announcement of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of new military aid going to Ukraine. What should people take from these sort of daily announcements that the government has found $300 million here, $100 million there, $500 million, under the cushion?
Well, I think the first thing, and it's probably the most challenging chaotic moment of them all, and that is realizing that tilting at windmills, thinking that our government is actually there to serve us to begin with, creates all this dissonance with our understanding of what's happening. We're in this like weird place where, of course, our government would take care of us if it knew we needed help, right? Of course they would. But it's not doing that. And it's because we went from the plantation mindset to an invisible plantation, an invisible prison called debt prison. And we've pretty much put every one of us in jail, so to speak, in this debt prison. And so their idea of being able to take care of we the people is really not really there. It's really there to keep labor disciplined, to behave as such, to meet the needs of capital. Whatever capital wants, it's there to do. And so you have to break free of whatever you thought the government was there for, whatever they taught you in elementary school. And you've got to grow up, Peter Pan, Count Chocula, and recognize that the government serves capital. It doesn't serve you and I. And so once you get past that, you realize that the government really does have no limit to its amount of money that it can spend, because it creates that money out of thin air when it spends. Article 1, Section 8 of your U.S. Constitution gives power of the purse to Congress. And so when Congress spends, it spends on whatever it deems necessary. Well, guess what? I go back to that chaotic moment. We are not what the government cares about. The government cares about geopolitical power. It cares about its oligarchs. It cares about its big businesses. All those global corporations that it goes to war to clear markets for, yeah, that's what it cares about. And so once you shed that neophyte view, that naive view that they're there to serve us and they're just being blocked by those meanie Republicans, once you get past that, you can have a better, clearer understanding of what you're looking at. Your lens will be unfogged. And I think that's really what you're seeing. And that's not conspiracy. That is just straight truth.
I mean, it's hard to look at the way this government has operated and conclude anything else. And I want to come back. You talked about government spending. I mean, of course, what the Fed was doing for the past 2 years has been government spending. It has just been government spending to particular entities, right? I mean, the entire way that COVID aid was structured, for the most part, other than the couple of checks that individuals got, was not to give aid directly to people, but to filter it through employers. And of course, what has happened, there was massive fraud by the people who were getting that. And so again, we don't have a demand problem that, as you say, would be easier to solve.
That's right. I mean, I want you to think about how funny what you just said is. If you consider the fact that government spending goes out the door through the Treasury. I mean, the Fed keystrokes those things into the Treasury's accounts. Then the Treasury spends on whatever Congress has stepped up to the plate for. If there's a bill that Congress agreed to, then that Treasury makes those payments right there. Okay. Well, if the Treasury is making those payments, the person that gets that first dollar from the Treasury has got a very privileged position. It's kind of like being the guy that gets the first round of cocaine. I know we're not here to support cocaine. But get my point.
I mean, speak for yourself.
Well, they start passing it down, and dude steps on it with some baking soda. And the next guy steps on it with some rat poisoning, whatever. I mean, they keep stepping on it, right? Well, that's what happens with our money as it's spent into the economy. That first dollar is a privileged dollar. It in effect, they get to dictate what the economy is. It's like the government has handed away its role in shaping the lives of citizens by handing it over to corporate interests. And they, in turn, dictate who wins and who loses, because they're the place where the government, it's like the wellspring from which all money cometh, is not from banks. It's from the federal government spending that money into existence. And so as the government is stopping doing that, many of us are already strapped to the gills in private debt. And because of that private debt being there, we don't have enough buying power ourselves to borrow. Let's all go into debt together and just create a great world, right? That's what they're leaving. And so when you tap out, when you give people so much student debt, so much housing debt, so many other debts, and the federal government stops, you're left with only one other source, and that would be if you're an exporter. Well, the U.S. hasn't been an exporter in, God knows, 20 plus years. We are a net importing nation to the tune of 500 billion plus a year. So that delta is even there. So you think about a recession, that creeping, that slowing down of the economy, it's all happening there because aggregate demand is going to diminish because people's buying power, their agency is gone. with the cost of gasoline, which we all need for our daily lives until they get smart and come up with an actual energy policy. I mean, we have no prayer right now. So, yeah, you nailed it.
Well,
but it's funny.
Steve, I wanted to ask you, you know, Deutsche Bank is not predicting that this is going to be a recession like what we saw after 2008. They're sort of saying, it'll be recession light. Don't worry about it. It's not going to last that long. But we also, at the same time, you know, we have historic official lows in first-time unemployment claims. You know, that it's the lowest in 50 years or something like that. You have unemployment officially at 3.6%. And so I'm wondering what you think it's going to look like if we have a sudden uptick in unemployment, which we know is the official number, traditionally undercounts, and what you think this coming recession could look like, if you think it's going to be like what we saw about a decade ago or something different.
Well, the recession that happened a decade ago was brought about by elite control fraud. You know, that right there was countrywide, and everyone shorting, shorting the mortgage industry, you know, buying up those CDOs. And it really brought about conditions that they just weren't prepared to handle. I think that, would it be exactly like that? I don't know if it will or not, because if you look, the properties are being bought up by folks like BlackRock. So their goal is to keep those properties elevated, to gouge for rents, et cetera. So do I think it'll be like the last time? No, I don't think it'll be the same. I think, though, that it doesn't really matter in terms of like the big numbers. I think it really matters about the little people. You know, most of us are still living hand to mouth. Most of us don't even have $400 in the bank to survive a crisis. If you got a flat tire, would you have enough money to fix it? So I think that the recession impacts people very differently. And I think because we haven't really taken any steps to eliminate poverty or eliminate the wantingness of humanity, even through this pandemic, we had every opportunity to change that, and we didn't. So I think that you're going to see a lot of people at the bottom truly suffer. And I think you're going to see a lot of people at that lower middle class truly suffer. I think that, honestly, that jobs, you're already dealing with some stagflation where wages haven't risen with the inflation. So I think that you're looking at the conditions that are going to create a fairly sizable recession. Will it be like last time? No. Will it be major enough for people to really start dying? Yes. I think that we're looking at a very serious situation. So I would like to see our federal government step in. But you see, a lot of good leftists don't understand economics, and they're out there thinking, oh, it's good to raise interest rates. Never mind, it's just a basic income for the wealthy.
Right.
Hey, we need to cut spending. Why? Why? Why would you want us to cut spending? They don't know. They don't understand. So this is where we're at, man. The good guys are fighting. It's like a rogue strain of an autoimmune disorder eating itself alive. It's just crazy.
I want to ask, I mean, this is maybe sort of rearranging the deck chairs, right? But I did want to ask what you make of the supposed upheaval at the Federal Trade Commission. You had Politico running a story about the rocky start that Lena Khan and her chief of staff, Jen Howard, have gotten off to, apparently alienating staff there by telling them to cancel speaking engagements for a couple of months and stop hobnobbing with the people that they're supposed to be regulating. Should we take some heart at this?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I think about it like this. You know, I go back to the SEC and all these other watchdog groups that are there that are supposed to make sure that things are done correctly. They're all underfunded. None of them are actually doing the job. They're all kind of in this weird nebulous state where they're too comfortable with the people they're supposed to be actually managing. And, you know, you could get a little bit of a willy out of, you know, them kind of cutting some of those things. But I don't believe that. I think that it's just sort of a fart in the wind, with all due respect. I think that the reality is that we need a real independent, auditable groups that are out there that are really doing the work of trust-busting, anti-monopoly behavior, going after bad actors in the trade sector, bad actors in the investor sector, all of those things. We need real, legitimate, countervailing groups to really be true watchdogs with teeth, not just with gums, but with teeth that can prevent it. So do I make much out of it? Nah, not really.
I mean, yesterday we had Hakeem Jeffries asking oil companies to be patriotic and lower prices. So, seems
out of the goodness of their hearts.
Yes, exactly. Seems like we should just be asking nicely, Steve. We've just got another minute left, so I want to let you tell our listeners what new projects you're working on and where they can go to find you these days.
Well, I am really, really excited. I've been doing co-hosting over at Status Quo on Tuesday nights with Jordan Cheriton. I do a show called Let's Get Ready to Grumble on Thursday nights, tonight, as a matter of fact, over at Status Quo as well. But I also am CEO and president of Real Progressives, and I do my podcast, Macro and Cheese, that's released every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. on any of your favorite podcast platforms. And I do a new show Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon called The Rogue Scholar. Not Rhodes Scholar, but Rogue Scholar. And I challenge everybody, come check it out. Love to have you all join us at Real Progress in Action on YouTube. And really, really appreciate you guys having me on. John, I know a friend of mine out there, Eric Kessner, who's in D.C., has run into you. A good guy.
Yes, sir.
Friend of mine.
Good guy. Good guy and a committed activist.
Yeah, Steve, you've been very, very busy. I caught that Rogue Scholar on YouTube this morning. I was watching it. So everybody check out Steve. You can find him lots of different places. That was Steve Grumbine. We're going to take a quick break here on Political Misfits and come back with more for you right after this.